How do you define essential? We've been put under Stage 3 restrictions here in Victoria, Australia. I would guess wherever you are, it's likely that you too have been placed under similar controls by your loving government. We are told that only essential travel is allowed, and that if you violate this mandate, you will be fined and potentially imprisoned. Just like the young girl who went out for a driving lesson with her mother and was given a spot fine of $1,600. I couldn't think of a better time to take your daughter on a driving lesson than when the roads are quiet and there is little else to do. Reports of similar situations are coming in from all parts of the world. Recently, a man was arrested in front of his family in Colorado because he had the temerity to take his children to a very large park to exercise, in the sun, with nobody else around. The police officers didn't maintain any kind of social distancing while arresting this man, violating his constitutional rights, traumatizing his children, and to be honest, making utter fools of themselves. People are even being shamed for buying paint for their homes. Unable to work, obviously unable to socialise, and told to stay home, the average freedom-loving and resourceful individual would naturally find something productive to do, such as improve their living situation through some DIY while being made a prisoner in their own home. A sensible person, during a so-called pandemic, might want to get some vitamin D via the sun, while at the same time take a more proactive step towards food security by planting some seeds in their garden. But likewise, these individuals are being publicly shamed for doing so. One retailer in the United States actually closed the aisles where seeds are sold in their stores to prevent people from doing this. Here in lovely Victoria, Australia, our wonderfully draconian Premier has made fishing and hunting illegal. Is he worried we might give COVID-19 to the fish or deer? These two activities, while sometimes falling under the definition of recreation, are for most individuals who engage in them opportunities to procure a food source. I don't remember seeing many large groups of hunting parties roaming around the wilderness, holding hands in the past. We are told that grocery shopping is considered an essential activity, but if you want to take personal responsibility for your food source during a time when you've been laid off from your job and can't afford to pay the rent or your mortgage, well, you're a criminal. How dare you? So, how do we define what's essential, and why are we allowing the government, an institution that by its very nature is designed, so I thought anyway, to protect our rights, to take them away from us all under the guise of fear and enforced through intimidation? To some, and this might shock you, fresh air, exercise, gardening, hunting, fishing, and living like a human being is essential. For mental health, for economic reasons, and even for physical health. Sitting around at home glued to the ABC, who recently suggested that COVID-19 was here to stay, therefore indirectly telling Australians that the loss of your freedoms and rights is also here to stay, isn't really an activity that promotes health. Curtailing human freedom and doing irrevocable damage to the economy here in Australia because of 48 deaths, at the time of this recording, when we have a population of 24.6 million, makes me think that something isn't quite right here. Preventing interstate travel by mandating a 14-day isolation period under these circumstances is ridiculous. We are led to believe that this virus is the most dangerous threat that Australians and the world has faced in a generation. We are told by the Premier of this state, through his actions, that we must do everything possible to stop the spread of something that the ABC News is telling us is here to stay. The same Premier who doesn't seem to care about the dumping of toxic soil near a school in the heart of an agricultural community because it's cheaper to do that than deal with it responsibly. More on that in a video to come. We are burdened with horrible restrictions on our society and lives because of a virus that most people will fully recover from. However, it's okay to roll out technology everywhere that could potentially cause a catastrophic health crisis for everyone. A toxic virus that will only affect a small number of people is the catalyst for the loss of your freedoms. But 5G and its potentially harmful radiation is going to be everywhere, even on the streetlights out the front of your house. It's hard not to see a connection considering that this technology will be the backbone of systems that will enable much tighter controls and restrictions on your freedoms. In China, the source of this outbreak, in Wuhan as a matter of fact, 5G was rolled out en masse just before the outbreak. It has enabled China to implement their social credit system, which essentially places the entire population under lock and key. If your number gets too low, you lose your freedoms. Neighbours, family members, and work colleagues can dob you in if you do something wrong. If your social credit score drops low enough, guess what? You can't travel, go to work, or spend money. Sound familiar? Mr. William Gates, the old head of Microsoft, the man who is rumoured to have stolen his software instead of creating it himself, said in an interview that we would not return to life as normal until mass vaccinations were rolled out. The same Bill Gates, who was involved in an exercise late last year, along with the WHO, the CIA, and various other think tanks and globalist organisations, simulating a global coronavirus pandemic. The same Bill Gates, who has coincidentally developed a vaccination technology, along with such lovely folks as the Rockefeller Foundation, that will leave a mark on your skin, a tattoo, if you will, that will allow the authorities, wherever they may be, to tell if you've been vaccinated. I don't find it a coincidence that vaccines have gotten a lot of bad press lately. More and more people around the world have started to question their efficacy. Natural alternatives to wellness, such as herbs, vitamins, good organic food, exercise, and dare I say sunlight, have never been more popular. The epidemics of diabetes, heart disease, and autism are far more concerning than COVID-19. Yet the institutions that are now supposedly tasked with protecting us from this scourge haven't shut down the very industries that are predominantly responsible for these health concerns. Don't you see the hypocrisy? Companies like Monsanto and Bayer are actively poisoning our food supply, and our governments do nothing. So while you're being told that your human experience has been reduced to staying home and only going to the grocery store when absolutely necessary, your government can't even be bothered testing for the harmful effects of things like 5G and vaccines. They have told the human species that social contact, an essential component to human health, is the real problem. They want you to believe the problem is your human nature, your lust for freedom, personal responsibility, your faith and traditions. They are telling families that the real danger is grandchildren seeing their grandparents, that recreation, exercise, and human activity is an existential threat to your life. No, these are the things that make life worth living. A few months ago, massive protests against governments and their tyranny and control were occurring all over the world. In China, Wuhan, as a matter of fact, massive protests against air pollution were accelerating. Hong Kong was on the verge of revolution, the protesters there demanding democracy and basic human rights and freedoms. In Iran, that government was also on the verge of losing control. Likewise in Europe, the Yellow Vests took to the streets week after week protesting their ineffectual government. What a coincidence that all of these protests are now not only over, but have been made illegal. Benjamin Franklin once said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." He was right.